Okay, good morning and welcome, guys. My name is Affirms. This is Pounds for Breakfast on this beautiful Tuesday morning, the 8th of November. Now, guys, we're about to have a ton of fun. We're about to dive in some really amazing things within the markets. And yes, the keen amongst you may realize that I have a blanket. It is cold. It's beautiful. It's raining all over the country right now. Wherever in the world you are, obviously stay safe, stay warm. There's never been a better time to be indoors and be a trader, to have some time in the markets. Now, we have an amazing day lined up, but before we get to what's happening today, let's get to every single one of you. Where in the world are you joining us from? I can see the chat's going crazy. You guys are letting us know, getting used to the rhythm of how we do things with an introduction and where in the world you're joining us from. So I can see Lizo from Bloemfontein, Graham saying good morning, Tumelo from Durban, Garrett saying Cape Town, Calvin, morning all, Rishi, John, Chippo, Mambachela. Let's see. So this is from Zambia. Colin, morning everyone. Lee from Skulkbake saying Cape Town. Michael saying morning all. And Mark Cooper saying hi guys. Sherman saying live in Johannesburg, but I'm in Cape Town this week. Beautiful stuff. Peter from Vake saying KZN, Peter Maritzburg. FK saying Newcastle. Linford saying Cape Town. Lucy Joseph, Vereniging and Free State. Good morning. And Tumi Beloy saying morning guys. Live from Santon, guys. It is Pounds for Breakfast. You know what time it is. We are changing things up this week. I'm proud to announce we have a new hire to the team, and you're going to be seeing some really amazing things coming from us in the coming weeks. Now, you know the bigger plan of where we're going, and we're going to start to edge on into that future. And just to give you a little bit of an idea, we're going to have in your inboxes very early in the morning a quick summary up to about 60 seconds of what you need to know in the day, so that we can spend less time on news, less time on these smaller type of events, and really focus on diving deep and looking at markets and taking trades. So we're really looking at how to make it as efficient for you as possible to wake up, have all the info that you need, be able to then join the shows and then execute on the market. So very, very exciting things coming up that we do have planned. Today is a very exciting day. We have our brand new trading platform back up online for beta testing. So for those of you who want to be part of that beta testing process, have a look at the link in the description down below. That link will then get you into our new platform. Now, this link is temporary, right? This is going to be a beta test. We're probably going to run a beta for around about a week or 2 weeks. So this means we are going to be making changes. We are going to be doing bug fixes. But let me tell you something. The more I trade, the more I play on this platform, it is mind-blowing. The ability to customize your windows and see different things is just on another level. Now, what we are going to be doing, and I'm going to be offering to Premium Plus clients, for those of you who have your Globex 360 live accounts over a certain value, all the work that I'm doing in my preset customization, being able to look at indices, currencies, be able to have news, be able to have heat maps, to have strength indicators, all these different outlooks. I'm going to be setting up profiles and I'm going to be distributing them to those of you once we've completed the beta process. So when you see very complicated setups that I'm going to be having, I'm going to be making sure that you have access to that. Now, the beautiful thing about our new platform is that it doesn't matter whether it's on desktop, doesn't matter whether it's on a mobile or a tablet. All of these windows and all the data that you set up and configure are transferable across all devices, which is absolutely mind-blowing. Yesterday, I did some analysis on the new platform, jumped into bed with my tablet, and I could see everything. I could do everything I was doing on my PC, I could do on my tablet or on my phone. So just absolutely mind-blowing. Link is the first link in the description down below. Now, as many of you guys know, it's the midterm elections in the US, and a lot of people submitted questions yesterday in terms of what is midterms, how does this affect, what's the changes, what can we expect? And I really want to spend a little bit of time this morning breaking that down, as we still have a couple minutes before we get into the London market open. And what we need to understand is that we generally have two schools of thought in the US, right, in terms of US politics, right? And these two schools of thought generally divide people in terms of their views, right? In terms of, how they position themselves against military spending, how they position themselves in terms of tax, how do they position themselves? And these views are very much split views. So in order to break that down, I've also linked in the article down below 2 links that are going to be very useful for you to understand what is coming up in terms of these midterm elections. And then again, also understanding what are the impacts going to be on the markets that we can also assume. So for this morning's show, we're going through the differences between, the different Republicans versus Democrats, those two stances, and what a change in those positions may mean. Now, we have presidential elections in the US, and this runs approximately every 4 years or so. And midterm elections generally happen about 2 years into a new presidential run, right? And what we need to understand is we have the president of the country. He can have a certain Republican or Democrat, but then we have, the House, the Congress, all the other constitutional levels that fall below that, and they too essentially have a different outlook, and they can gain control in terms of majority votes, and their opinions influence legislature, right? Whether it be taxation, whether it be increased spending on war, on defense, abortion rights, so on and so forth. So it's important to understand some of these things so that when these terms are spoken about, you're well informed in terms of what that all means. So the links down below, I've linked 2 items. What is a Republican and what is a Democrat, right? And it's a tabled view on certain things like position on healthcare. It will be economic ideas, stance on military issues, so on and so forth. The second article I've then linked, right, is a difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, right? Understanding their 2 positions. We obviously know that Donald Trump was a Republican, whilst Joe Biden is a Democrat. Now, there's a high likelihood, and if you go back in US history, we see that from president to president, they always swap hands. We have a Republican, then we have a Democrat, then we have a Republican, then we have a Democrat. So these things tend to change, and that is why you see such big swings in terms of thinking in the US about all things, in terms of public health care, in terms of military spending. And these things will have an impact on the markets. You can imagine if we have, let's say, a Republican in power, right, that has a certain view on healthcare, has a certain view on military spending. We know that if that House of Representatives changes to Democrats, that spending infrastructure will change substantially, and this then has a knock-on effect on the markets, right? Because again, some of these big entities are within the S&P 500, are within the US 30, as well as big tech. Big tech is obviously coming more into, I would say, the crosshairs of politics in terms of data, what is transparency, what is and what isn't allowed, right? So politics does play a part in big business, and this midterm elections will have an impact. Now, to summarize, on average, every time for the past, I believe it's about 18 midterm elections, we've seen the markets perform exceptionally well post midterm elections, right? And we could be seeing the same thing transpire over the next 2 days. And remember, we do have that CPI data that is coming in on Thursday. So the CPI data in combination with the midterms is essentially going to determine part of the dollar's immediate fate, right? The CPI data is basically what the dollar is holding on by a string or by a hair, right? So we are going to go through that data, and we are going to have a look at what opportunities exist for us. Now, in addition to that, please remember this afternoon's Dollars for Lunch is going to be the first Dollars for Lunch that we are accommodating for DST, meaning it's a special broadcast. It's going to be daily, and it again is for clients who have $100 or more. And what we're going to be doing here is we're going to start before the US Open, right, which is at 3 o'clock, and we're going to trade all the way into the New York Stock Exchange and then past and beyond. We're more than likely going to wrap up around about 5 p.m. in the evening. So based on some of your feedback, I believe this is a time that will work for most people. And obviously, we're going to have new shows coming extremely soon. But moving into the news, let's get started so we can get into some analysis. We've got about 3 minutes and a second away before we need to jump into some live trading. So let's quickly have a look at what is happening on a local front. And no surprise, I think there was earlier on, we spoke about the fact that everybody might need to start learning how to speak Chinese. And we're seeing more and more articles confirming that, right? SA construction firms rocked as Sunrail awards mega projects to Chinese groups, right? This is happening currently everywhere around in Africa. And it's quite a sad thing to see, unless this is a very specialist group of technologies. It's quite sad to see that, we're awarding tenders to external countries where we have all the skills and tools locally to achieve a lot of these objectives. So let's see what ends up happening with this, but obviously not great news to see, especially if you're in the construction industry, for the future of construction. In terms of US news, one of the biggest items really that I found that has really stood out here is the fact that, Musk has thrown his weight in terms of this midterm election. So there's an article over here that says that Musk is backing Republicans just before the midterms, and that is obviously going to come out today. So the US market this afternoon, if we have a look at some of the fundamental data, there's not a lot of fundamentals for the dollar this afternoon, right? I think everything is going to be about midterms. Everything is going to be discussing, who takes what sort of lead. So definitely the links in the article, links in the description down below. I've linked those two items, as I've said. The first item being, what is a Republican versus a Democrat? Their different opinions and where they're obviously currently sitting. We obviously know that Joe Biden is a Democrat, right? And at the moment, it looks like Republicans are on the set and tone to win this midterm election. So the impact of that, we're obviously going to dive a little bit deeper as we get into dollars for lunch, as we get closer confirmations that it is a high likelihood that the Republicans will take over the House or the Senate. And then we'll have a look at what those ripple effects going to be on key items, right? Most importantly are going to be military spending, as well as their energy position on, where they think things should be going. So very, very useful. Read down below. It'll make sure that you're in the loop for the whole of this week, as a lot of these items are going to be trending online and something you obviously want to pay a little bit more attention to. All right. Now, as we move into some of the fundamentals, we're going to have a quick look at the S&P 500 heat map, which again should be doing extremely well across the board. Tesla's still second day in a row taking a loss of 5%. Now, I do believe this is due to Elon's involvement in Twitter. Elon shaking the tree quite substantially there, and Tesla stock is being heavily shorted by Wall Street. So again, I still have a very good long position that I am going to hold and stay in on Tesla regardless of what happens with Twitter, right? Tesla's value proposition is massive. Their Q3 earnings call was substantial, and I do believe Tesla is going to be one of the best performing stocks for 2023, in my personal and humble opinion. Now, moving on to some of the economic data events for today, we don't have all too much for the dollar. We have a mixed bag on the euro, the pound, but these are mostly speeches, right? So in most cases, when we see these speeches, it's mostly, a bunch of discussions. Some tend to move the market, but, nothing really to worry about here. We're just going to allow price action to be king, and just obviously remembering when we have times of a ton of speeches, a ton of discussions, you just want to exercise good risk management on your part. That's going to be the most important thing when dealing with some of these speeches. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to open up and have a look at where we're currently sitting from an indices perspective, and how we can potentially take advantage of indice markets this morning. So there's a really good setup that I just want to make everybody aware of, and I want to draw everyone's attention to. So first things first, we're going to open up the US 30, and I just want to point out that we have a really good structure that we are currently breaking as we speak on US 30, right? This is a 15-minute time frame, and we are currently breaking structure at the start of this session. Now, there is a little bit of support here that I'd like us to map out, and I only am looking at shorting US 30 provided we break this market structure, and it very well may be that there. Okay, so provided we break this market structure, we're currently testing support at this moment in time, and should we get through that level, I will then be very, very happy to jump into a US 30 short. Now remember, the first 1 or 2 minutes on new market opens can have some volatility, so we obviously just want to make sure that break is substantial. We do know that on a 5-minute, even on a 15-minute time frame, US 30 has got a much bigger structure here that could very well be breaking. Now, having a look at the same thing on NASDAQ, right? NASDAQ has already started that pretty big sell-off there. That's on a 1-minute time frame. Having a look at a 5-minute, we're already starting that sell-off, but there is still market structure at play on the NASDAQ, right? I just also want to point out, if I quickly switch over to our new platform, I just want to point out something really quickly through to you guys. If we have a look at the position of where we're currently seeing instruments at the moment, right? Again, there's our new platform. If I switch over to my indices layout, I got some alerts there really quickly, and we just quickly switch over to my indices layout. I just want to point out the fact that from a US 30 here on top, we do already have, a little bit of that breakout structure where if we look at NASDAQ, and I'll open this up full screen, it is going to look a little bit weird because I'm only sharing a portion of my screen with you guys. We will then also see that NASDAQ is still sitting in that resistance channel, right? In that resistance zone, just having a look at NASDAQ. So we do have to be a little bit cautious, right? We've seen that big tech has taken a major knock in the markets. while we can see that US30 is more than likely on part and parcel of that recovery. Now, what's really great about the new platform is you can choose to, when you change timeframes across the board. Now, obviously, I'm in the way of this particular little window here, but in most cases, let me see if I can just resize it. Okay, so I'm in the way of that window there, and you'll see the window is just behind me. But whenever I change time frames, I will then get the same time frame for all instruments. German 30 right hand side, NASDAQ behind me, as well as US 30. Now there's an opportunity to go and physically lay out a bunch of different windows, to have your economic calendar, to have your currency strength, to have an analysis on markets, and it's just absolutely mind-blowing. So I will be doing a training on our new system and new platform. For those of you, I will be inviting you. I still have your emails, your previous emails, and I will explain how you can get a little bit further involved on that. But I just want to point out that NASDAQ is still within that bear structure, hasn't yet broken out. We just obviously want to just pay a little bit of attention to that. US30 is still struggling on that breakout. Should we get that pop on the downside, I will consider shorting that for the day. German 30, massive sell-off already on that side. Yeah, I do think we're more than likely going to get that sell. Just based on the volume we're seeing come in this market at this point in time. Let's have a look. I'm just not looking for any sort of pullback here, right? We do know at the start of some of these sessions, we do get some of those market pullbacks. If we have a look at yesterday's session, let me just get to it really quickly. Start of the London market again, also with a little bit of the shifts from the US data and the US time zone perspective. Let's have a look here. Just want to show you guys the start of the markets yesterday. We got that start of the market at 10, a little bit of a pause for about 15 minutes and then a continuation. So definitely a shift in market structure coming in at 10 o'clock. However, we don't have a shift today. We have a continuation of this current market structure. So I'm a little bit cautious of a continuation of a sell. I would have liked to have seen some sort of shift or some sort of bounce off of this support level that could ultimately allow us to continue that buy momentum on US 30, right? Otherwise known as Dow Jones. So we're going to continue to look at this, right? And obviously monitor for any weakness. Again, I'm pretty happy to sell provided we break outside of that structure. I'm pretty happy to jump in that one and start looking for some opportunities. I think we'll observe it on a 15-minute time frame, and we'll just look for any sort of breakouts there. We can really see on a 15-minute, we're getting a little bit of that pullback there. I think a great indication of the fact that we may not be continuing that sell would be a pullback outside of the structure on a 15-minute, that is US 30. And then again, looking at some sort of breakout here, if we focus on NASDAQ, I just want to get a little bit of a tighter market structure. There we go. So NAS has broken out before. We just need to obviously be aware of that. But I think for me, a pull above the $10,955 mark on NASDAQ could be that sign of a breakout. And then again, for US 30, very similar thing. We'd want to see that breakout above that very, very same level. So we're pretty much going to be able to monitor it from this perspective. 15 minutes on US 30, 30 minutes on NAS 100, and German 30 is already looking well on its way towards that corrective move towards the top side. So I'm glad we don't obviously hit the button as soon as the markets open, specifically for London. London obviously needs to fully understand its direction, and then we have opportunity to start rocking and rolling on that. I can just see here we have Joseph from Kuruman. Welcome. And Sumi Paloy saying the new platform is mind-blowing. Guys, there is nothing else like it. Yes, Colin, so trailing stops, we are busy re-adding. We removed the limit on trailing stops. So previously the limit was 1,000 points, which obviously from a NASDAQ and German US 30 perspective is tiny. It's nothing. It's not enough to execute an order. So we are busy changing that. And there are a few other additional widgets that we are playing with and obviously tweaking at the same time. So yeah, we're just busy waiting for confirmation on the break or move here, specifically focusing for me on US 30. And then we will look at some other instruments as well in the background. Now, quickly moving into the dollar index, in terms of why the dollar is sitting in such a vulnerable position, specifically obviously having a look at the midterms, right, we can see the dollar for the first time in a long time, this is a daily time frame, has started that little bit of a breakout process from this bull market structure that we've seen, right? We're getting those lower highs there, we're getting lower lows, and where we are currently, we've broken out of structure, but we're currently retesting to try and see if the dollar will get back into structure. Now again, the big dates from a fundamental perspective, the big external economic event that's going to potentially move the dollar and decide whether the dollar at the moment, you need to understand, is holding on by a string. All right, if we start to see that bad CPI data on Thursday, we can expect the dollar to break structure completely and in totality, and that's where we're going to see some massive market moves on indices as well as commodities. Now, having a look at gold is also in a very interesting position, very key position for some sort of big breakouts, and I do want us to monitor this because we are going to have some opportunities to take advantage of from a pending order perspective. So this is currently looking at gold XAU USD, and what we can currently see at this moment in time is that we have this bigger bear structure I've spoken about before. This is a 4-hour time frame, and we are currently attempting to retest that 61.8, right? That fib level that sits just north above us, located at $1,669. So 1689, sorry, 1689. So $1,690 to an ounce of gold, right? This is a very key level. And should we get any weak CPI data on the dollar, this could cause gold to break through this level. And this is going to be a fundamental level for a massive tick towards the top side. Now, Brent over the early hours this morning took a massive knock. It doesn't look substantial on a daily time frame, even on a 4-hour, but really if you go into it on a 1-minute time frame, or even 5 minutes for that matter, you'll start to see that Brent took a little bit of a knock earlier this morning. Let's just double check quickly. There we go. Right, so we took a knock. Let's just see here. I think my charts weren't updating a little bit earlier. I think I was still seeing that little bit of a pullback there. So that's a correction. That's my apologies there. We can see that Brent is still well within its move towards chasing those newer highs outside of, that 98.92 level. So again, I think I'm not 100% sure if my charts aren't updating correctly. Okay, they are. So we made a little bit of a peak out at the, let's see, that $89 per barrel. Again, that's my key buy zone. Now, $89 per barrel exactly is not my buy zone, but a breakout through that. You can see why. Looking at a one hour time frame, we got a little bit of a pin bar there. Markets have retraced, and at this moment in time, Brent is just waiting for that weaker dollar. Should we get that weaker dollar, this is going to be the takeoff area for Brent to really start making some big gains. On a 4-hour time frame, you can see we've finally recovered once again over this massive structural support that Brent has been holding for quite a bit of time. Now, we have peaked above that structural level before. We have not peaked above that level and crossed a major resistance supply zone, right? So again, that $98 per barrel signals both a stay above support as well as we're breaking the $98 per barrel, which is a massive structural support. No matter where you look at the price of Brent, you're going to see that $98 is a massive area for Brent to potentially take off from. So again, the whole market, doesn't matter where we're looking, we can see that there's these potential imbalances. And again, only thing the market's waiting for right now is that weaker dollar to start that massive continuation towards the top side. Alvin 4C saying, good morning, guys. Bit late, but had to join. It's never too late. As long as you're with us, you're right where you need to be. You are home, and that is what it is all about. So we're no longer looking at gold, obviously, as that's popped up on the screen. And I'm not seeing a ton of volume. German 30 has done a little bit of recovery. NASDAQ seeming to pause out a little bit. I just want to make sure that the markets are actually moving and it's not a stall from my side in terms of MetaTrader. It may be a stall on my behalf. I just want to know if the stream is running correctly. It does seem the stream is running good and we don't have any issues there. Okay, then we're seeing that little bit of a move there. German 30 has recovered. US 30 definitely testing the depth of that support. And again, NAS doing staying within structure here. So again, we may start to look for that sell. We're about 13 minutes in. So So 12 minutes into every new session is generally my sweet spot, right? So I usually wait about 12 minutes, 12 to 13 minutes, whatever that direction is for that session, generally starts to run and at least is confirmed after 12 to 14 minutes. So if we're still seeing a push down, we may run with this one as a sell, just obviously fully understanding that USD is extremely strong at this point in time, right? From the 4th, USD has been in this monster rally. Now, because we obviously are sitting in this fairly tight market structure, and we do know where our resistance level currently lives and sits, it's a very easy trade from a stop loss perspective, because all we need to do here, if we're going to chase a sell, is simply look at, from a risk perspective, placing our stop loss below, above the last resistance level, but also above this diagonal resistance level. So any sort of retest, we can cover ourselves from a stop loss perspective. So just be aware, if you're looking at shorting this morning or for this particular session, you might be looking at about 1,000 pips total risk from a stop loss perspective. So I just want to point that out and just make sure everybody is aware. But yes, USD either struggling to get to the downside, but there is certainly momentum there from the markets. Let's just have a look at it in a minute. Just have a look so we can see the price gathering there. And all we're literally doing here is we're just waiting for that next impulse towards the downside. We're seeing not as much volume on this London session as what we'd like to see. We got an initial candle, initial 2 candles pushing out about 400 pips, but we're getting a little bit of a lackluster type volume at this moment in time. So again, we don't want to be caught into a range, into a low volume market, because that means it's going to be a range of positive and negative without any decisive moves in any one direction. So we will look for that little bit of a punch. Just having a look at potentially yesterday, what we saw from a volume perspective. I just want to zoom in here really quickly. So yesterday we got volume in for that first 10 minutes, right? We got direction in for the first 10 minutes, and then we stalled out for potentially about, let's say about 10 minutes. We were a little bit sideways, but then we saw a resuming of volume towards the original trend direction, right? USD popped out yesterday for 3,000 points, a little bit of a pullback, and then moved another 1,200 points, 1,200 pips. So I think we're just waiting for a bit of a volume game here. And again, we just want to have a look at, is this volume going to be top side or downside? For a top side push and a continuation here, we would be looking at a break in structure on this 1 minute time frame. Again, this is USD, and we're simply just going to map out, do we get a break above, right? That last resistance level is going to be the 32,815, right, mark. But at the moment, this morning, the session definitely looks like there's that little bit of increased volume towards the downside. So that is obviously where we want to pay a little bit of attention. Yeah, and I think from my perspective, I just want to see that nice, decent push to that downside move. So I'm gonna pop in a position there, and I'm literally gonna put my resistance above that last level, and let's see if we can get a trailing stop engaged here. And I'm gonna search for approximately about 3,000 points from a trailing perspective. And should we make some good moves towards the downside, then I will obviously increase that trailing once it's just moved to an entry position. So just switching to a 5-minute time frame, just having a look at where that sits. And we have pushed a decent amount through support now so currently running not all too much, maybe about 100 pips or so into that support level. And now we've made a nice little push there, 100 pips or so, but still nothing yet to write home about. Let's have a look on a minute time frame. We are making some of those gains now, and a way to get out of this order, right? If there's any sort of reversal here, you just want to map out this little structure here again, because a move above that level would mean a break in this little, right? It'll be a retest of support, which is now resistance, and a little break in that structure would mean more than likely going to range to the top side. So just maybe use that as a trigger. I'm going to tighten up my stop loss into that range. So if we hit this diagonal resistance, then we can obviously get out of it quite quickly to then reestablish and potentially get in an early buy if this volume doesn't continue towards the downside. So looking at the time here, we're seeing that at 10:15, we're starting to get a little bit more volume in this market. And again, with all of these DST changes, right, it's going to be important to observe some of the characteristics that the market uses in order to move around these DST shifts, right? So every time we have DST shift, it's going to take time to reanalyze, get used to the flow of the markets, and also some of those changes that we do end up seeing, right? So a little bit of a reversal, put a pass mark. Let's see if we get that continuation towards the downside, and we'll just essentially rally it out. Entered worried about a 1030 pullback. Yeah, it is possible. Lucky saying got stopped out. I don't know how Lucky got stopped out. Markets only moved 70 pips. So remember, guys, when you're utilizing indices, right, when you read points, those, for every 10 points, it's 1 pip, right? So example, if you're reading, 700 points, that's only 70 pips, right? Which, if you look at the average move of the market in a non-volatile situation, right, the average swing within a market is anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 points, which is 500 to 1,000 pips. So if you can't handle the swings, then obviously it's not going to work very well. Any little vibration in the market, any little stutter will take you out if you have a very, very, very small stop loss in that region. Okay. So yeah, we're not seeing a ton of volume, but in either event, we're going to continue to monitor. We are getting some of those pullbacks on US 100, a little bit of those pullbacks on German 30. So markets may be giving us a little bit of a sign that don't want to continue to the downside. I'm not liking the volume here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm literally just going to, at this entry point now, consider getting out of this particular trade. Right, it's not ticking all the boxes that I want, but I also know we could get a nice little push. So I think for this particular one, I'm just going to leave my stop loss in place. We've got about 150 pip stop loss, which is tiny. Yeah, that's essentially what I'm just going to leave it as. My risk reward here is that if it pulls back, it's 150 pips. But again, the potential retracement here could be massive in the sense that if you look at this little bull structure, we do have all the ability to retrace back to our previous fib level, right? That 38.2, which currently sits about 2,500 pips south of our current position. So risking 150 pips for a potential 2,500 pips, there's good risk reward ratios there. You could do that 20 times over, lose 15 of them, and still be in a net positive situation. So a little bit of a feeler trade there. Not a good amount of push, not a good amount of volume, but that is sometimes how it is in the markets. You can push through support and then just simply come back and retest that. And we might end up closing out this trade in the next couple seconds. Let's see. So we are going past that level. Let's see what the markets want to do there. Pretty happy to close it if it's only 150 pips. Nothing too worried about. And remember, guys, it's all going to always come down to risk management. If you're opening a position with 30% of your account, you are going to be stressing. You're not going to be in a position to take a loss with a smile on your face. It is always going to be a stressful exercise when you look at taking a loss, right? Because that loss means your account gets absolutely smashed, and you're not in a position to enjoy the process at all. Okay, let's see. So I am closed out of that position. NASDAQ is currently sitting with a pin bar towards the downside. Probably going to see a similar thing if we drop to 15 minutes on US 30. Let's have a look. Yeah, similar thing on US 30. So in this particular event, we are then going to have to wait for some sort of market structure to break out. From a bigger time frame perspective, we do know that on US 30, we are outside of this bull market. Now, being outside of a bull run doesn't mean necessarily a bull run. A bear run is going to take over. We can be in a little bit of a range, and then the next move ends up happening. But obviously with the midterms, right, there are going to be a lot of analysts looking at a lot of different angles to try and understand, where this market may end up going, a lot of opinions as well. And yeah, we obviously just need to be aware of that. That's going to be crucial and key. In terms of this resistance level, which was support, now resistance, I definitely think we're spot on the money here from a market structure perspective. And for me, right, this is going to be a key level in order to trade. So just giving you an idea of how simple this is in the new environment, right? So I'm opening up the new environment there. I've got some price alerts, pops up nice in center of my screen. So really easy to focus on. I click on my indices chart, which is a pre-set up chart here. I can then go and for this particular example, I'm going to just go and open up a new window, right? Which is great. I can go and drag this onto another one of my, desktops or another one of my screens. I can move it over to the left or the right. But I just want to show you guys this really quickly in terms of how simple this becomes in order to then map out. Let's have a look here. Right, so we're going to go on to, let's see, an hour. I'm just going to go into full screen mode here. You're not going to see everything that I'm busy doing, but you'll see majority of it. Okay, now the great thing about this particular trend line and the setup here is that I can tell the system that, hey, listen, let's maybe drop down to a 15-minute. I'll be able to show you the detail. I can tell the system, hey, listen, right, there's my trend line, right? And I just want to adjust it to just be a little bit more in line with what the market's saying. There we go. I can confirm that is correct. And now I can literally go and set up on this particular line, right, and create a price target and a price alert. So I can go ahead and obviously create normal just alerts, right? That when, price closes above or below this particular line, I can create a message, let's say buy US30. But then more importantly than that, I can add a trading action, right? So I can say when I get over that US30 mark, I'd like to buy 20 lots of this position with a, let's call it a 1,000 pip stop loss, which we know is going to be a 1,000 point stop loss. And I can have a TP that will be, let's see, I would like to essentially make 5% of my account on this particular move. So my TP will be 5% total, right? And I can leave a comment and I can call this full structure. Do this base structure break. Oh, I just cancelled instead of dating. Right, so you can add multiple trading actions. Okay, so now on my particular price setup here, should price cross this level, right, for a buy perspective, my system will automatically open up that buy and put in a stop loss, go ahead and do all the work for me, which is really good. Okay, just want to map up. There we go. So that's going to be essentially what I'm going to map out there. I'm just literally going to look for any sort of break on support / resistance there. So we're not getting much volume in that particular market. It's pretty much standing dead still. Yeah, I'm not gonna look for anything too absurd there. And again, whatever changes I do on the platform, right, it'll reflect that when I'm looking at that chart specifically. So if I change everything to 15 minutes and then zoom in, I can see all the data that I've obviously done. Now, obviously, this is quite squashed. I'm sitting in a much bigger screen. This is only using a portion of my my total screen size. But if you open this up, it just becomes, just making your analysis so much better, so much easier in order to be able to see and or use. As opposed to MetaTrader, it just sometimes looks messy, sometimes looks a little bit cumbersome. Yeah, so markets hovering there. So there is definitely indecision. I mean, you can see it on a 5 minute, but I mean, we can clearly also see it on a 1 minute. We're getting those pin bars back and forth, right? Bull pin bar, bear pin bar, and just indecision at this level. And this could very well be a retest of support, right? US 30 markets trying to get back into support territory. If they fail this level and continue, then again, I'm happy to jump into that sell. But that push towards the top side, obviously just came too close to my risk. Happy to be out of the trade. I've got no issues there whatsoever. And again, it's about just being wrong. If you want to be wrong, if you're going to be wrong quickly. And if you're going to be right, let's be right over a longer term, right? That's what it's all about for me. So I'm just readjusting my support level there and just having a look at what things materialize here. Let's quickly have a quick switch and have a look on gold and some other items. Gold's still building that little bit of a retracement. Oh, USDZR is another interesting one, right? So I said yesterday that, we could get a pickup here. It's a very early entry, but, we do need to be cognizant of the fact that we've got that bigger support level. I think best described in that way. Let me just zoom one out. So there's the bigger structure currently sitting on ZAR, right? Now again, getting an early little feeler trade in there yesterday. I got closed out of that particular position, but again, we have a much bigger rising structure here. The only issue we're going to have with this rising structure is that in most cases, right, with the structure, we pull back to known fib levels, right? So in this particular case, the 61.8 is very, very far south of our current order level. So we need to start hunting for other supply zones along and between that 61.8 and that 78.6. The unfortunate thing is that, we have quite a few different levels here that could be, counterintuitive, right? The first level being that guy over there, right, that we could potentially use for 61.8, but we're also currently sitting on another support level, which is more than likely that guy over there. So we have quite a few levels, none of them being absolutely rock solid, that we can rely on for a bounce. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to utilize this diagonal resistance level, diagonal support level, and we're going to have to tweak it to really get, what is going to be that absolute market bottom there. Another alternative for tracking and measuring support levels is essentially utilizing Fibonacci, right? So in this particular case, we can draw out Fibonacci. We can see there's our 61.8 and it coincides with that level, right? 61.8 push. So that's all good. That's merry. There's no issues there. The next level we can have a look at is draw out, where that push came in. This stopped at 50, right? So we could utilize the same thing in terms of this last move and have a look at where it will pull down to in relation to its last bull up thrust. So last push to the top side, we can see a potential 50% pullback, right? It sits a little bit lower. It doesn't necessarily coincide. Let's just see, right? That 50% up thrust or 50% pullback on the up thrust may coincide with this support we just drew out a little bit earlier. That very well may play out. Got a good amount of resistance there. Yeah, decent amount of support, but more importantly, in the past, we see this level also holding price down quite well. So that might be a potential area of entry, but it's still quite a bit south of our current price for USDZR. Obviously, a weaker dollar, should we get that CPI data and the dollar comes out weaker, that could force us into that buy entry area. And again, we'll have to see how the dollar deals with that data once we see that information pull through. So we're obviously just going to continue to monitor and have a look at that one. US30 not giving us anything clear this afternoon, or this morning rather. We're still just sitting in a low volume territory, exceptionally low volume. Candles are at max about 200 pips, where we know in times of volatility, those candles should be at least 3 times that amount. So what I would do here is just look at this diagonal resistance, right? If we see a push or thrust down past this low, right, in this next couple hours or next couple minutes, or the next 30 minutes to an hour, I would consider chasing that to the downside. If we see a break up above on a 5 minute or even a 1 minute time frame, in this particular view, I would really consider getting long and trying to see if we can keep that momentum that US30 is currently built. Massive momentum towards the top side. We can see yesterday afternoon, New York Stock Exchange, right? I'm glad we did end the show a little bit early. We didn't wait for the New York Stock Exchange because it was a little bit crazy, right? That would have been one of those sessions that you guys know I don't like, where essentially you caught out in a massive bunch of volatility and range. So here's yesterday's New York Stock Exchange open at 4:30, right? Initial volume top side, massive volume downside, massive volume top side, huge volume downside, right? So in the total of 30 minutes, right, this thing must have ranged, 4,000 pips or so, right? So those aren't the sessions I like to be in, because if you do catch a sell at the perfect time, right, you're almost going to give all that money back in terms of the pullback. If you manage to use a trailing, that will close out your trailing for sure. Next move, massive pullback, and then we see a break towards the top side. So we can see here from 5 o'clock, we definitely got a confirmed direction, and 5 o'clock we saw a massive 1,500 pip move there. So we are going to be a little bit cautious, because obviously today we are going to be doing the New York Stock Exchange open as well as the US open. So we're going to try and see, usually after a ranging day like that for the New York Stock Exchange, the next day, and I say this on average and it's not written in stone, the next day we generally see a little bit more of a consistent directory on the market. So if it's a range, great stuff. We're obviously looking for a straight move this afternoon for the New York Stock Exchange. Again, it's all going to depend where we see this market come into play. Currently looking at US30, it is looking like she wants to get long, right? It's definitely looking like it wants to get long. Just also, please remember, we're pushing into resistance here. So I'm looking for a little bit of a pop. Should we get a nice little pop here from a long position, we're then entering at an ideal position to essentially just slot our stop loss in below this diagonal and below support, and then allow it to run. But we do want to see a pop here. If we get a rejection, right, I won't be selling that rejection, and we just potentially are going to be stuck in a range. So I'll put in a little bit of a feeler trade in here. There we go, popped in a little bit of a feeler, and let's see if we can get this pop through this level, and whether we can see anything materialize from that. From a market structure perspective, maybe on a micro structure, we could potentially use something of this nature, a little bit of a rising structure, just looking at those wicks, and we can potentially just utilize these wicks in terms of placing our stop loss, right? So we may look at something like that. We are popping through, but nothing substantial, right? It's very small pop, nothing really big here. Even 1,000 point trailing wouldn't catch that move there, even potentially 2,000 pips. So we're just going to see what happens here. If we reject, no issue. We are rising into support, so we're pretty much just going to allow that to materialize and happen as it should. And then again, that's the problem with being in a range. Should we break that and start to fall, obviously we might have to catch that. So I want to catch the direction of the market. I don't necessarily want to be caught into these ranges, but as with fishing, sometimes you got to throw in a couple bits of bait there and wait for something bigger to take out to take the bait and then run with that trade. So I'm happy with some feeler trades, and that's why I'm not layering these orders, 3-4 orders at a time. I'm just popping in one, and if markets then do go in that direction, and then capitalize on it as that market ends up moving. So let's have a look here. Nasdaq looking pretty good for some sort of breakout. Obviously we've gone outside of this channel once before, so it's not yet confirmed that we are in any sort of breakout on Nasdaq, but it would be great to see a little bit of a press higher. That would give us some confidence on US30. At this moment in time, we obviously do just need to acknowledge the fact that we are still in a bigger rising structure across the board. So yeah, it may be worthwhile just holding that, and let's see what we could end up seeing from that. But we still have that Federal Reserve interest rate decision that Nasdaq is still, trying to recover from. Took an absolute beating across the board. US30 also still on that recovery process, as with everybody else, except that Federal Reserve interest rate decision. We've actually beaten it already, right? So we've recovered a full 100% and some, while Nasdaq, in terms of the big tech, has not yet made that recovery from that massive 75 basis points below. So let's keep it in eyes. Let's give it a look, right? US30 well positioned to potentially make a new high today, just in terms of its massive momentum. So let's see what we can get out of this. Let's have a look really quickly on the new platform. Yeah, so I think on the new platform, I'm going to set up 2 orders. I'm going to set up another order that basically is going to be an alert with a price that I'm going to end up buying 40 lots of this should we end up pushing straight through. And what's very cool as well is you can set up on your system that you can have a minimum risk management, risk structure. And then if we see that your stop loss is bigger than the pre-allocated amount, it won't allow you to place the trade. That's very cool. There we go. I'll set up those 2 orders there quickly. Let's see where we are currently sitting there. Okay, so we should be in profit there. It should be pushing through. Nice. Okay, so we're getting that pop now. The pop's a little bit delayed, right? But now we're getting that pop. Again, nothing really to write home tomorrow about. We will throw some money in the air really quickly for that little pop there. But again, nothing massive, right? We would like to see this push potentially another 1,000 pips or so towards the top side. Then that would be something good and worthwhile celebrating. So we're going to wrap things up, and we are going to be looking towards and forward to our dollars for lunch session. That's going to be a little bit later, and we're going to then obviously look at diving more into the potential results of midterms and which markets it could affect the most. I can see that US 30 is still popping off to the top side, so you may want to consider either taking some of your profits, adding positions, or tightening up your stop loss there as we allow that one to breathe and do what it's got to do. But not a lot of volume in the markets. I think the markets are specifically looking at what will come of that Thursday CPI data, and is essentially going to be in limbo until we end up getting there. But let's see. It would be great to hold an indice long position because it is expected that CPI is going to come out negative. That's the current forecast. But again, with the dollar and the forecast, we've seen that things are absolutely one way or another. With the new platform, have push notifications in a cell phone? Bussy, yes. So the new platform will have an app, right? It'll have a desktop app. It'll have a mobile app, being Android and iOS. So whatever you do on the platform, right, will be cross-platform enabled. So if you create an alert there, if you create a pending order there, or wherever, it would then automate across all platforms, right? The only thing is, it also works very similar to when we talk about MetaTrader, that the platform itself is executing the order. So if your platform is offline, meaning you're not logged into your platform, right, it won't alert you unless you're logged in. So you need to be logged in, and you need to have it running somewhere, because the platform itself that executes orders, it's called offline orders, right? And you can achieve that with a VPN. You can achieve that with a emulated or virtual private network as well. Yeah. So guys, that's all we have time for today. Yeah, we will see dollars for lunch. I think we'll see a lot more volume as we saw yesterday at the New York Stock Exchange. We can anticipate a very, very similar thing. We will break down what the Republican versus Democrat likelihood is and which stocks it's likely to affect the most. But as always, we're obviously going to smash the New York Stock Exchange. It is Tuesday. We should see normality come into the markets from NFP Friday. Monday's always a bit slow, a little bit sideways, but we should start to see a little bit more of that normality coming into play today. As always, guys, have yourselves an amazing day. Remember, risk management is everything. Be safe, trade safe. As always, remember to do things the Global 360 way. I will see all of you with $100 plus accounts for the Dollars for Lunch session. This is going to be our first special Dollars for Lunch session. 2.5 hours. We're going to cover a ton of things. We are going to be looking at a bunch of details and a bunch of information. Tomato saying US30 took your stop loss. I don't know how, my brother. You've got to draw price action. You've got to put your stop loss in a place that price can move, right? So when your stop loss, when your risk management's not right, doesn't matter what glass ball you rub, doesn't matter what it is that you do, you're going to struggle to maintain that stop loss. I can see, let's see, Reese Witherspoon saying 3 likes. I'm not sure, Reese, did you give 3 likes? or there's only 3 likes. There's more than 3 likes, more than 30 likes. Any events, guys, have yourselves an amazing morning. I will see you guys a little bit later. I have some personal affairs that I am taking care of today as well. So in between all of that, I will get back to all your messages. I see there's a lot of inboxes from you guys, and we will answer all of them until I see you guys a little bit later. Goodbye and have an amazing day.